Ahoy world, I'm Brent.
I'm Chris.
We're back.
Yeah, welcome to Brent Chris Talk. We were off last week.
We were, and it was a necessary break.
Yeah.
Get some things done, but we're back, and that's the most important thing. And we have a lot of good stuff to talk about today.
Yeah, I feel like we missed a lot.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, with the week being a blur, it's like, should you go into a whole bunch of that, or you just dive into this week and
What
everything else?
highlights do you remember? I have a couple that I really did want to get to, but we were off last week.
You go first.
The one that just really sticks with me is we know that there's a couple gentlemen who are throwing their name in the hat in the Republican side.
Yep.
Trying to run against Trump. And
Bill Walsh.
Joe, is it Joe Walsh? No, I get
Joe Walsh is the musician.
I know. I
right?
still think that's his name, but no, I really do. Anyways,
yeah.
But he was from Illinois. He was an Illinois congressman.
We're not extremely well versed in this. Yeah, I don't know. But he was a politician
in Illinois. Anywho, so he wants to go ahead. I'm gonna make sure I'm projecting well. Do I still remember how to do this? Anyways, he decided to run against Trump as primary challenger, and I believe the ex-governor of Colorado, he was on the Green Party vice president candidate last time
couple
around
of folks,
with yellow tie, crazy dude.
I know, it's like, you really need to make choices that people won't think you're just absolutely out there.
Right. So now, what I thought was interesting, or I found frustrating about this, is that there's been like 5 states, mainly southern states, that have just decided they're not even going to have a primary on the Republican side.
Yep. And I get that these people have virtually no chance of winning any of those primaries or even making a dent. But isn't this America? Like, shouldn't we have a choice regardless? Like, nobody should be stifling opinion, right? What happened to free speech?
So, I'm curious. We have a cricket in the studio today, and he's eluded
Hello,
us.
Jiminy.
Yep.
We've missed you.
Yep. That's hopefully.
You wish upon a star.
Hopefully, I'll drop like a good fact or a bad joke, and it'll be well timed.
Oh my gosh, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You know what they say about working with animals. So, I just think that this whole primary thing really highlights that the Republican Party is the party of Trump.
Oh man.
I mean, they are down the rabbit hole, and they're not coming back.
He has a stranglehold on him.
Yes, he has an absolute stranglehold on him, and
regardless of circumstances, the stranglehold is there.
Now, that being said, I think if somebody really was passionate on the Republican side about making sure Trump didn't win, they would run third party.
Yes, we've had sidebars about this.
We mentioned it on the show too.
Yep.
About Kasich.
Yep, you're right.
I think that if you really believe in it, you throw your name in the hat as a third party.
And you go TR on them and bull moose the way in to...
Bull moose the way in.
to making a dent into one of the candidates. Usually one will take the hit, right? When there's... Like Ross Perot did it. I can't remember if it was Bush won, if that was the election, but there's instances, I think I talked about that too, where these third-party candidates have screwed over one of the... I know, and there's no joke, Jiminy. You're too early.
I know. Oh, you missed your cue. So, I would love to see a solid Republican candidate go third party. So I guess he would be Republican, but somebody with Republican values.
Yes. Through and through. No one with the baggage and or... I mean, every politician has some baggage, but stuff we can live with, not things where you're just like, I'm going to have to completely set aside all my moral compass in order to accept this, in my opinion.
I've seen a few interesting polls, too.
Okay.
On the Democratic side, switch gears here.
Yep.
Most Americans approve of Joe Biden's his health care solution.
Correct. Building on the foundation of the Affordable Care Act.
And still allowing private.
Yep. Allowing the private industry to exist, which I think a couple of folks in the last debate were sticking up for him. Klobuchar, the senator, and someone else, basically just saying that, this is the most, reasonable route without completely flipping everything on its head. That's, I think, their argument.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that that makes sense to a lot of more Americans, especially when you start thinking about how people argue against people trying to kill the Affordable Care Act
This
and
is.
defund it and all that.
I have ideas for the insurance company if they have to be a player still in the system. But, I mean, part of me thinks it's ridiculous that there is a middleman when it comes to our health. Like, there's people that are
So
very, very rich.
are you saying that you wouldn't even want there to be... So what about supplemental policies? Like, for example, when you retire and you're on Medicare, Medicare won't necessarily pay for 100% of every procedure or everything you need for your health care. So there's these supplemental policies that you can buy to cover the rest of it or another portion of those costs, and you pay for it just like
Yeah.
regular insurance.
No, you're right. I understand what you're saying. And my, I guess my answer on that is that it's not a, wow, is it that bad? The cricket just won't give me a break here. My idea on that is that it's not just a one simple fix to solve the problem. Like, it's a very multifaceted issue, and that in order to make it work where we could maybe cover all the cost, we have to find ways to lower the cost of those of the treatments. Like, America spends way more on healthcare, and like, if you look at the data, and if you assume that there's not going to be any changes to, like, if you go with Bernie's plan, and you assume that there's no changes for the price of healthcare, and he just starts covering it all on a one payer, it like bankrupts the country in, I think, 25 years or something. But that's not assuming the changes that they would make to the cost of medicine and how we do treatment and other things.
That's a lot to unpack.
And that's so. Again, this is another thing. We're gonna skate right on by that because it's not the topic of the day.
Yeah.
Kind of fits in.
Yeah.
But skating by it, that Trump tweet that I sent you.
Yep.
So Trump sends out this tweet that basically,
Shocker.
calls out it calls out the European Union lowering their
devaluing the euro. They're
Yes.
basically they are manipulating their currency in order to make it less strong than the dollar, therefore making the U.S. imports more expensive and less attractive for Europeans.
And this is what drives me nuts about this, because while I read this text, I'm researching this show, okay? And I know that if I want to figure out and unpack what this commander-in-chief put out there in his 140 characters, that I'm going to have to put at least 2 hours, probably an hour's worth of research into
figuring out
what he's talking about, find objective sources and stuff like that. And it's not feasible to keep up with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, he tries to oversimplify everything,
and you can't. America needs to stay out of things. Americans individually need to stay out of things that they aren't willing to put the time in to better understand.
Sure.
You can't read something from the president in 140 characters and then quote it as fact.
Everyone loves to have an opinion, and that doesn't always have to be an informed opinion, unfortunately.
Speaking of, I'm just fired up right now. I'm so sorry. The other thing that's been
what really grinds your gears, Chris?
Yeah, it grinds my gears, is that I keep seeing these posts, we've talked about this too, about things that AOC has tweeted.
Correct.
And they're poorly photoshopped. The one I've seen too that are poorly photoshopped, you can see how the white is different in the square where they've posted it in, and people are like, she's so dumb. Come on, people. If you are willing to retweet or Facebook post something of a tweet that somebody else said, and you aren't willing to at least just get on Twitter to see if they actually said it, don't put it back out there.
It's really easy to just Google that thing and say AOC says whatever they said, and you can figure it out pretty quick. I've done the same thing. Some of it, I mean, people are legitimately passing along something that I would say, okay, that's kind of ridiculous. Then it wasn't AOC, but we talked offline about how it happens. You're like, okay, well, that's legit. You have to look for the facts, but oftentimes, especially with AOC, I struggle to say her full name, so I won't try. But basically, you get that, and it's just a lot of the made up ones, it just makes you lose faith in people's ability to form an objective and educated opinion. So
It very well put.
so
That's well put.
that really grinds my gears as well.
Yeah, so it ties into, I feel like, the Walmart thing and stuff like that. I mean, it's
Oh yeah.
people know we don't know our rights, and people aren't willing to do the research, and
Well, it's the whole quote unquote ask forgiveness thing taken to the extreme, where I'm gonna keep doing things, and if you get mad about it, then I'll say, well, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I
Right.
was just trying to do the best thing I
mea
could for
culpa,
you.
mea culpa.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I get it. They're just, I request everyone assign themselves a level of personal accountability in what they put out there. The
Yeah.
research that we do goes into the show takes a lot of time. I
Yep.
mean, and I'm proud of the research that we do and put out there, and I feel
sources.
like we're giving you, and we always show our sources. You know where it's coming from. And I'm not saying you have to go to that level, but if it's something silly, like a tweet that you think someone said and it grinds your gears, check it out. Like, at least go that far before you put it back out there in the ether.
Yep, spread the misinformation. There are a lot of vulnerable people out there that I have tried to steer back and say, just check out Snoops or Google or something and figure out if this is really what people are proposing or what they've said. So,
Anything else we want to throw in? How was your week? Your life good? Your everything else aside?
busy.
Busy. Yeah.
Lots going on. Busy. Kids are doing well, though.
Yep.
So I think that's probably the best thing that's going on and something I'll take and run with, because if they're not doing well, then everybody's not doing well.
Right. I feel like I'm coming into a sweet spot with my kids where Harrison is moving out of the terrible twos and Evelyn's coming into this, like, really sweet spot where, like,
The calm before the storm.
Yeah, exactly. She's
a wonderful
not a
time.
terrible twos yet.
Yeah, but gaining more independence. She's walking like crazy. Just blew my mind.
I was reading to her, and then we have picture books, and I gave her a bunch of picture books today, and then I was playing a game with Harry, trying to keep them separated, and it worked out great. I mean, she just sat there and flipped through the picture books, and I tried to help her say a word every now and then, and she wasn't getting in Harry's stuff. Harry was happy, and it was good.
Life is good when that goes on.
Yeah. All right. So we already told you guys what we were doing in our last episode, this episode, and that was we're going to dive into Big Pharma.
Yep.
But we didn't want to do the same take on Big Pharma that everyone is doing. So we didn't do anything on the opioid.
Yep. Not strictly. We'll probably mention some of that, but I mean, it's not like we're going to
I'll gloss over
segment.
It'll be like...
It's important, and it's a major crisis, but it's not the focus
It's
of this
well covered.
Big Pharma piece that we're going to go on now.
Yes.
It's a much broader topic.
I have done the research on this and found myself sick to my stomach several times.
Well, there's a lot to, find behind the covers, or under the covers, so to speak. I mean, you start looking into the history of everything, and I mean, we talked before about, and I mean, we've read, historical accounts, and, there's always been a healer, right?
Yeah.
People that have provided medicines or comfort or whatever it may be, midwife, apothecary, witch doctors, shaman, whatever you want to call them, the healer, right, of the communities. And sometimes they're revered in cultures, other times they're persecuted.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's like through history, there's always been that element of things. And so, over time, and I mean, like we were talking, I'm pretty sure that anesthetics and like major painkillers were not readily available during the Civil War. So like after that, you get like towards the 1900s and around then, you start having these major breakthroughs, and these drugs coming out, and like people start realizing the power of medicine, right, and it starts to grow. And medicine has come, light years in my opinion, especially over the past 150 years. And so you have that going on. And as with anything that is influential and powerful, and like weapons and alcohol and all kinds of industries, right? Business takes hold, right? and develops ways to make profit, to continue and sustain the corporation, the business entity, right? To maximize the value to the shareholder. You know, that's what business is in the capitalist system.
Yep.
So you have all those elements, and I think,
Yeah.
you know, it just kind of becomes this machine that we have today.
And again, I think that's a good point, that our show today is not on pharma, not on pharmaceutical, it's on big pharma.
Yep.
And what I would argue where we went horribly wrong with things. These are some statistics from today, not like today, but the world we live in today. 30% of prescriptions are never filled.
Right.
Most of that's due to people can't afford them.
Okay.
Drug prices. Yeah, I know. Drug prices are rising 4 times higher than our wages.
Really? Okay. I believe that too, you know? And I had some data I was looking at that, you know, over the course of years, you know, certain drugs had gone up, you know, anywhere between 25 to 300%.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, we're talking a short time span, like 2, 3, maybe 4 years. The same thing, exact same thing, is just flying up in terms of, and it just can't be demand that's driving that.
It's not.
Right?
It's very much greed.
Yeah.
And so this is the first kind of thing I will throw at you to think about.
Yeah.
I argue that one of the problems with big pharmaceutical companies is honest to God, a lack of technology to make doctors understand the patient's needs and affordability prices. There's a gap.
Oh.
Because like let's take blood pressure medicine, something that a lot of Americans are on. Okay, it could cost as little as $4 a month, or it could cost as much as $577 a month.
Sure.
Just based on what drug or insurance, copays, everything you have.
Yep.
And there are 100,000 other outcomes with like different variables.
Yep. Yep. We talked about this. I mean, my argument back to you was, well, the doctor, I don't want a doctor that is a financial advisor. I want a doctor that's the best freaking doctor I can have, that's an expert in medicine.
Right.
And knowing that, not everyone even thinks about that side of it. Like, it's not the doctor's fault that necessarily that you're getting prescribed a super expensive drug when there's a potential that the same kind of relief could be provided by a less expensive one. But it's the tool. It's the bridge between the doctor, allowing them to make the best decision because they don't have anything readily available.
And that's the thing. Depending on which drug rep services your doctor greatly depends on what medicine you'll be getting.
Yep.
It's not... Arguably, you're not getting the best.
Yep. And who's pushing the best?
You're getting the one that's...
incentives for those sales.
So I put forth the solution that we really should let the... we need to let our pharmacists be able to make changes. Like understand what the prescription is going for and make changes based on that.
Sure.
And I think that pharmacists would be a great tool in doing that. This information I'm actually talking about came from a pharmacist. His name's Michael Ray, and he did a great talk. Michael Ray, I'm not sure how he says it.
Well, and I mean, you think about it, it could be even a combination of the doctor could, like the symptoms could be cataloged in such a fashion that drug options could be provided, almost like, I don't know, like a self-service type menu for the pharmacists when they're talking. They have to do consultations in Illinois. I think it's like a law, like you have to get spoken to.
Right,
to get a
from the
prescription.
pharmacist.
Yeah, so during that, you could say, hey, I filled
Is
this.
there cheaper options?
Yeah, I looked for the generic, and I think that a lot of times it may be the default, but it's still, there's a massive opportunity to make sure that people are guaranteed to get the best price.
And this is another reason why it's important to support your local pharmacies. Like, go to a good pharmacist.
Sure.
Because they're going to try to find cheaper drugs. Doc in the box, same issue as like Walgreens, CVS. They're not going to probably give you the same personal treatment as a small pharmacy could.
Probably, yeah. I believe that.
So this Michael Ray talked about a rash he had. The extra mile I go to for you guys with the research.
You read all about this rash.
Yeah, read about this rash. So he got prescribed this nystatin triaminoline.
Okay.
Okay. And it was going to cost him $103.
Okay.
And this drug was actually just 2 active ingredients that they put together. Okay,
Right.
so he could get it separately. Then a statin would cost him $4. So you think, wow, that triamylene, triamycoline. I'll never get there. Must be expensive. No, it cost $2.17. If you put it together, it made a savings of 94%.
So you had one cream with these 2 active ingredients. The manufacturing process or whatever drove them to charge $103, $104 almost.
Yep.
But then each separate cream could be put together and it'd be $6.17.
Yeah, saving of 94%.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so
Like, I don't want to really playing doctor and figuring that out, but
it's crazy. And like what he was saying is that it's like you go to Lowe's. I love Lowe's, so I'm gonna stick with Lowe's.
sure.
Go to Lowe's and you want to buy a nut and a bolt. You can go and pull out the drawers and you can find the right one, the right thread count, whatever.
Yeah.
Boom, boom.
Yeah.
It's gonna cost you what, 20 cents?
Sure. Well,
You know?
yeah, I got you.
$1.
It'll be cheap.
It'll be cheap. Or you could go a few like little whatever they call aisles down.
Yeah.
And you can get the ones that are pre-packaged, and it's gonna cost you like $6.
Right.
Just because someone took the time to put it together. And in this case, he was able to buy these 2 active ingredients by themselves. But for a lot of times, you can't do that because the drug companies aren't putting them out there.
Sure. And it may not be possible to, like, put that together.
Exactly. And like he knew that he could actually apply these 2 creams independently and achieve the same results. Like this was an instance where it would have been fine. He argued that illness to wellness should be a choice, that we get to how we choose how to do that. It shouldn't be mandated with you have to have the most expensive heart medicine or something when there's a cheaper one who could do the same thing.
I mean, as long as it has the same principles that will solve your ailment, then why not? I mean, why wouldn't the cheapest be the default?
Right.
It should be.
And there's a lot of reasons why there. Well, I'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
But so this guy, just to throw him a shout out in his company, he started something called RX Saving Solutions, which actually would go through and help find the cheapest way to get a drug.
Okay.
And so this is something you could actually do.
Huh, that's neat.
The Berkshire Hathaway Medical Group
Yep.
reduced their pharmacy spending by 1.8% despite a 12% rise in pharmaceutical prices over that same time.
Wow.
It's pretty good.
I think that's impressive.
So, do you want to do like the general overview statistics? I like these.
Yeah, let's have some.
These are fun for me.
Stats are great.
I think so. Almost 70% of Americans are at least 1 prescription drug. 50% take 2 or more. 20% are on 5 or more. And that's according to the Mayo
That's
Clinic.
just crazy. But you know what?
Lot
I
of
mean,
drugs.
like, I know for a fact that my parents both have some prescriptions that they take, and like my grandmother has a ton.
Yep.
And I know just people all over the place who take medicines. I prescribe them, and I don't have any, fortunately. Like, I'd knock on some chair.
Chairs are what?
Knock on that. I don't have any, and I think that's something that, like, my goal in life is to maintain my level of health through diet and exercise to the point where I can try to avoid as many medicines as possible, because your body has to filter like your kidneys and your liver and like all has to filter through all those. And
I do allergy medicines. I know I probably should stop doing that. Part of that's just where we live.
Yeah.
It's not a great place
Well, you know,
for allergens.
Sure.
And I have a bunch of cats too, because I'm a bleeding heart. Take care of the animals. And none of that helps. So
Yeah, and I believe so. It's just a massive amount. And so, I mean, you know, you start to think about that. Let's get into like a stat of mine that kind of ties into that.
Yeah,
70%
please.
of Americans are on one prescription. Why is that? Well, I think one of the contributing factors is that of the top 13 pharmaceutical companies that are out there, they spent 60% more on marketing than they did on research. Over $1 trillion in marketing, and I think around $650 billion on research. Which $650 billion on research is impressive, but I think we'll get into where all that research money is really going and why it's not so impressive.
yeah. For every that I found, just to parrot your statement, for every $1 pharmaceutical companies spend on research and development on a new drug, they spend $19 advertising that drug.
Yep. Call your doctor now and ask them why such and such can help you with all of your
Such and
ailments.
such, yeah.
And by the way, the next 30 seconds are going to be spent telling you why it's going to kill you cause a psychotic episode, or something else that's catastrophic to your life.
Yeah, it causes the thing you were trying
Yeah.
to take it to stop.
But you know what we can do to solve that? Give you
Give you
6
another
more
medicine.
drugs that will counteract that, and then vice versa, each other. And then eventually you'll just become so ill,
Yeah.
you'll wind up in the hospital and die.
51%. This ties into what you just said too. 51% of prescribed drugs make up only 8% of the cost that U.S. spend, where 49% of the drugs have exclusive marketing rights and make up the 92% other spend.
All prescriptions.
So, okay, I'm sorry, I said that badly. 51% of the drugs that we buy make up 8% that the cost, 8% that we spend on
all pharmaceuticals.
On the generics.
Generics. Okay.
So the other 49% that are patented.
Okay.
49% are patented. There's no generics of them.
Okay.
Okay. They make up 92% of the money spent.
Okay. So there's just So it's just proving the fact that generics are so much cheaper.
But there are so few.
Correct.
But
so much fewer.
There's so much fewer. Xanax.
Yep.
That's a popular one. It has a 570,000% markup.
Ugh. That just makes you want to throw up.
I know, dude. I rechecked that number 3 times.
Yeah, that's nuts.
It costs less than 3 cents to make a pill, and they cost over $137 a tablet, and that's according to the Livestrong Institute.
That's amazing. I wonder how they got the cost to make that thing. I mean, I had some of these, but I mean that's just nothing like that. I mean, mine's like piddly. I had one where basically they had a 12-week course of pills for hepatitis C treatments, $84,000 for that, and they made 50 billion in sales in a year, but 570,000%. I mean, that's a hell of a markup. Well, how do they justify this stuff? Isn't there some evil? Isn't there some evil guy who was in the news who bought some
Shkreli?
rights? Yeah,
Martin Shkreli.
Yeah, and he's gonna rot because he was trying to make people go through hell to get this medication. Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Evil. In 2013, the total spent on drugs in America topped $329 billion.
Yeah.
It's roughly $1,000 a person per person in America.
Wow.
And also in 2013, the worldwide pharmaceutical profits were $980 billion, which was twice as much as 10 years prior.
And that speaks to the growth of the industry. I mean, so you didn't have, at least to my knowledge, these massive drug companies, until I think 70s, 80s. That's when they started really proliferating.
I think they definitely saw the happy pill.
And then the 90s, it just explodes, right? That's the golden age of pharmaceuticals in the 90s. And then you get into this thing where the pharmaceutical industry was making massive profits, locking these drugs down on patents, and then basically finding themselves making a lot less money once the generics hit the market. And then so what they did was they basically developed these tactics to get around the generic market. One thing they did was screwing around with the patents, basically modifying, putting the research dollars into modifying the existing drugs just enough to make them different, to rename them and get a new patent.
No.
Evergreening the patent.
Evergreening.
Yep, keeping it evergreen. It's always under patent and locked down for that company. They also got the Supreme Court to allow pharmaceutical companies got the Supreme Court through a lawsuit to allow them to pay generic drug makers to delay the release of generic equivalent medications for a certain time after the patent expires. So they're actively colluding to lock down the generic makers so they're not putting them on the market faster.
How do you get the Supreme Court on board?
Well, basically, it was a lawsuit. They started doing it. Somebody found out. They sued them because they said it should be illegal. You shouldn't be able to do this, and they lost.
God, I wish I understood that better. Yep. I don't understand how that makes...
Well, it's basically you're doing something that people think should be illegal, and it's one way of creating laws, a basis of law to enforce. And so, because you can have Congress write laws, vote them in and get the president signs them, all that, or you can have precedent through legal standing, and so they did that.
As a songwriter, I get it.
Yeah.
Like Disney found a way to extend copyright just before that ran out for them.
Sure.
Like, and I get it, but I don't know how you have a heart and soul and do that for pharmaceuticals.
Oh, but just wait, I have more.
Ugh.
So, what they also do to stifle the generics from getting out there and reducing their profits is they pay a lot of money to the supplier, to their suppliers and what are called pharmacy benefit managers.
Yep.
They give them rebates and chargebacks for the medications that they approve for their pharmacies that they support. And so
in essence,
yeah,
the more they actually have to cover, the
Yep.
more they make.
Yep, exactly. The more expensive, the better. This totaled $150 billion in rebates and chargebacks to from the 13 biggest pharmaceutical companies to these. They're called PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. So, $150 billion in 2017. How staggering is that, right? So they do this. They approve the higher, more expensive medications for prescription drug coverage for their policyholders, and rather than trying to contain those costs, they're basically just encouraged to, like you said, to cover medications that yield higher rebates that charge their customers more money.
Yeah.
I mean there's no heart and soul in that at all. And like you said, they've raised prices on all their medications.
And from what I've read, they've yet to show any great reason or rationale.
No, they don't have to. It's not illegal.
So you can talk about big pharma and cancer.
Yeah.
This is what I feel like is not talked about enough.
Yeah. No. Let's do it.
There are 580,000 cancer deaths in America every year.
Yep.
There are researchers like Michelle Holmes. She's the associate professor at Harvard Medical School, and she has tried years to raise money for trials of the effects of aspirin on breast cancer. In animal trials, it showed aspirin may inhibit breast cancer from spreading, yet her peers on the scientific advisory board seem uninterested.
Okay.
And for some reason, this is a quote from her, for some reason, a drug that could be patented would get a randomized trial, but aspirin goes unexplored because it's 99 cents at CVS. So, because they can't make money off of it,
they won't put in the trials.
Yeah. Now, this is something I think super interesting, and I wanted to save this, but I'm going to do it right now. In September of 2013, the British Health Services decided they would fund it.
Okay.
And the study is actually going on right now. It runs until 2025 and involves thousands of people. It's actually looking at the survival and the, what's it called when it comes back?
Ooh. I know remissions when it's going away.
When it comes out of remission.
Okay.
But it wasn't just breast cancer they're studying now. It's colorectal, prostate, and gastroesophageal cancers.
Wow.
And do you have any guess why Britain would be interested in that research?
No.
Because they have to pay the bill for their people.
Oh, yep.
So they have an interest.
Yep, in negotiating a lower rate.
Not even that, in finding cheaper methods to treat these things.
Well, yeah, for sure. Negotiating, achieving lower, it's all the same thing.
Sure.
Saving money.
In 2010, 10 cancer drugs each topped $1 billion in sales.
Yeah.
This guy, I'm never going to get his name right, Vikas Sakutme?
Wow.
I know. They started a nonprofit called Global Cures, and it promotes alternate treatments for what they call financial orphans. What you were talking about, the patents that they try to evergreen.
Yep.
They're trying to get money for the ones that aren't going to make the pharmaceutical companies more money.
Right, and so that's what you're talking about with the research of this aspirin thing. Like, aspirin's readily available.
Yes.
Let's talk about the other part of it too. And like, this is right on topic with what you're saying. So there's all these other things out there that could be funded and put out on the market, right? That it's going to solve some problem. But if it's deemed to make less money, like, you got a pie in front of you, right? and you got so many. That's your resources.
Yeah.
So if you're a business, you're going to say, okay, well, I can only carve out so much of that pie for what I'm going to research.
Right.
And so what you do if you're going on the business side of it, and this is what we talked about, capitalism is not necessarily the best solution um, for this.
Right.
Is that you're going to look at the top 10 or however many you want to split up and say, okay, I need this much, and I'm going to divvy it up. And when I run out of money, those are the ones that are going to get it all. So if your whatever ailment it is not profitable enough, you may never get investment into research that could develop into a treatment.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's shocking.
So this guy, just countering that, Larry Norton, he's the deputy physician in chief for the breast cancer program at New York Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center.
My lord. It's quite a bit. You always pick the mouthfuls.
I know, man. Can't you just work at the hospital?
Some doctor.
Doctor.
Dr. Norton at, let's just
Larry
read it,
Norton.
at NYMSKCCS. Jesus.
Larry Norton says that there is a gap in the system. The biggest challenge we have today is not necessarily the science, it's creating a business model that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can I say to that is bullshit? Like, it is bullshit that is what holds people back.
It is bullshit.
It drives me nuts, man. And that's what's wrong with our mindsets, that we think, oh, we just got to find a way to make people money off of it.
So, well, and this is where our opinions may diverge a little bit.
Sure.
And I mean, I don't think it's bullshit to make money off of it in the sense. I think my main solution that we'll talk about later, it drives to the fact that, you know, I would prefer to see, as I do with healthcare, a partnership with private industry versus a solely government funded or I don't know how else you would put it.
Yeah.
Run operation.
Single payer.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm not going to get into the total solution now, but to me, I mean, we got into the whole discussion earlier too offline about how there is, in my opinion, some fundamental good from the drugs that are created. The good is what benefit is being rendered by medicines. Not all, and we'll talk about, of course, opioids and antidepressants and things that are just massively overprescribed. Adderall, things to control your kids.
Yeah.
Right? Behavioral things. But there are some people who do need those drugs, and I think I'm talking about maybe more of the minority, right, in the stuff that's prescribed.
And that's why I wanted to talk about cancer. Yeah. Because that's where I feel like we have to say, I don't care if you're going to make money off this. I'm sick of losing family members to cancer. Fix this. Like, fix it now.
Yep.
Like,
and we have an accountability issue.
Yes.
You know?
According to Tufts Center for Study of Drug Development, they estimate that creating a new drug from early research to late-stage trials costs $1.3 billion.
Sure.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, I do get it that they don't have unlimited.
It's massively expensive.
When we go back and look at their profits on how much they're making off a year, a 570,000% markup on a pill, I think it's ridiculous to say
go ahead,
they can't put people before profits.
And so that's where we get into accountability. I'm not going to again dive into my solution completely, but we need a higher. So how do these companies fund their research? Where do they get all the money for that? Let's talk about that.
The National Institute of Health
is a massive U.S. government entity.
Yeah, is responsible for funneling most of the money that the U.S. government delegates for research on diseases like cancer.
Yep.
Now, particularly for cancer, it goes through the National Cancer Institute, so we'll come back to the NIH.
Yep.
And they contribute to about 15% of all clinical trials related. They try not to give money to the evergreening.
Yep. So they have some scruples.
But that means that they are the ones paying for the groundbreaking
research.
Research.
Yep.
They have this term called the Valley of Death. I love this episode already. It's got all these cool things. Evergreening, financial orphans, the Valley of Death. The Valley of Death
That sounds so exciting, though.
is a term they use to refer to the time so many drugs die. And that's where the funding will fall apart right before key human studies.
Yeah, sure.
And in 2013, the NIH gave $12.7 million spread out to 9 projects to research compounds under patent that were no longer being explored. Basically, drugs that could help people for very small amounts of money.
Yeah.
And the only way the drug companies would even agree to research them further was if free money was given to them.
Yeah, I mean, it is sad. That's where the oversight needs to be there, right? If I'm giving you billions of dollars to research and then take these drugs to trial and all this other stuff, yes, the money should be made. I think that should be an agreed amount, right? To allow, because you don't want the company to go under. If they're really producing good products, then you want their staff to be maintained. You want the leadership to be maintained. You want a lot of things to be propped up. But it needs to be within reason in the sense that it's attainable by there shouldn't be this massive disparity between those who can afford care and who can't. We're not getting back into the healthcare debate, but I think that's a portion of it. This is a massive cost, and 30% of the stuff's not even being filled because people can't afford them.
Yeah, 1 in 4 seniors
I believe
are
that.
skimping on their medicine or stretching it thinner to cut down on costs.
Insulin?
And that was the other one that we didn't go into because I feel like it's pretty well covered.
It's covered. It's covered, but
but
it's a massive issue.
what we're trying to put, I feel
It's
like we paint these
dear to
really
my heart.
big pictures and we fail. Like we hope that you're putting the narrative together, that we're putting out. But like we're saying, the money is not nowadays. Nowadays, the money is not going to curing cancer.
Yep.
It's going towards making a profit fighting cancer.
Yep. It's going to maintaining drug patents. It's going to ensuring that those things that are patented are what's being prescribed, be it through sales, and it's ensuring that those are incentivized through pharmacies and insurance so that they are approved and easily prescribed.
I have a perfect a case or example to talk about, but I'm going to get to it because I want to lay my foundation.
Let's do this.
Some cancer treatments are costing $100,000 for a course of them. And like what happens with most cancer treatments is eventually they're paired. They're paired together to form one stronger drug or whatever, one compound.
Yep.
And so eventually we could be looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars for one round of chemotherapy for your cancer. How many people have that laying around?
The burgeoning costs of healthcare. I mean, it's not just the people; it's the insurance industry, right? Talking about driving up premiums for everybody else in the market. It's not the people's fault they have cancer or whatever their ailment is. They should be treated, but the cost shouldn't be so astronomical that even the insurance industry starts getting buckled by these burgeoning costs, right? You don't want everyone in the market to be paying more because of that.
So that Global Cures, the one I talked about earlier, Sukatmi and his wife. They're the ones trying to, get out these financial orphans.
Right, prop them up.
Yeah, prop them up. And so the pushback against that is that cancer research, like the big thing is now immunotherapy. And what, quick overview, immunotherapy shuts down the cancer cell's ability to evade the body's immune response.
So that it actually fights the cancer.
So your body's the one fighting the cancer.
Yep, that makes sense.
And that's a new way. And it was viewed as a failed approach until recent molecular breakthroughs that made it relevant and practical.
Yep.
And that's what we're doing. That's where the new research is. And it costs a ton of money to do that research on a molecular level. Drugs like Yervoy, from Bristol Myers Squibbs. They grossed $960 million in 2017, and this treats advanced melanoma. One treatment goes for $120,000. Gleevec from Novartis cost 4.7, grossed 4.7 in global sales, and it treats myeloid leukemia. Recently, the FDA just opened it up for other forms of leukemia.
Wow.
Now, Global Cures, again, they're the ones identifying the financial orphans, and they said believed to enhance the immune response to tumors. So what some scientists are saying is that their approach is dirty medicine. The whole world is going forwards towards targeted therapies, and they're going backwards, is what some scientists say.
Mm-hmm.
But Sukatmi believes that alternates have a synergistic effect that can't be reduced to a single molecular target. Meaning there's gotta get the whole body on board. Like, just because it doesn't target the one molecule doesn't mean it's useless. So the big one is like breast cancer and NSAIDs. Like, that's the one guy's talking about too. The NCI estimates the annual cost of breast cancer in the United States is $19 billion. Okay, that's how much we're spending on breast cancer.
Wow.
Now, Sakotmi, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering that.
I'm sure you are.
I know, I do too. If you listen to the Art Cart, you know it's not new for me. This guy argues that if the single insertion of a low-cost drug could save lives and put a dent in those costs, it's worth the money to study it.
Yeah.
And the drug that he pushes for is something called ketorolac.
Okay.
It's another NSAID. A lot of stuff, like, it's crazy. There's like drugs out there that can do crazy good things for us, but because they are cheap, the research won't be funded. And this is the one that, like, really got to me. This lady's named Dr. Fiona Simpson, and we'll put the links to everything I'm quoting here.
We got a lot to put out there.
But she lost her mom to cancer, and she was already a researcher, but she became determined to beat cancer.
Yep.
And she found a way to test if a chemo drug would work or not on a patient. Not every chemo, but very specific.
Okay.
It was for head or neck and head cancer.
Okay.
And I'm sure that's even vague. But because the problem was only 15% of the people who took the drug had a success rate. But 85% that didn't still had all the horrible
Side effects. Yeah.
So she took that to the big pharma companies. And they said no. Because at $60,000 per patient, they didn't want to lose out on 85%.
Sure. They wouldn't get that drug that yielded the side effects. They didn't want to have it not be prescribed because it wasn't going to work.
So she does a great job explaining this, and I'm going to butcher it, but I can get the story out.
Yeah.
So she, in her previous job, happened to research something called antibody-dependent cellular
Cytotoxicity.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
This is what working at the hospital comes in handy.
Yes, yes. Now, she's the woman who found a protein that would fix the issue with the 85%. Okay. Found a way to... It changed the proteins, so it made them all receptors, not just certain ones.
Okay. So the drug would work?
Yes. Now, the problem was that they needed to inhibit this molecule called Dynamon. Sounds like a Pokemon, but Dynamon.
Okay.
Dinamon. I don't even think that's right. That was the whole phonetics there coming in.
Yeah. Okay.
And basically, it was a molecule she needed to inhibit. But people said that it was too harmful to do it.
Okay.
Because it was important. It was linked to, like, our vision and stuff.
So
like
they
that.
didn't want to inhibit the molecule that was providing some benefits, but it was stopping the medicine from working. Okay.
Right. But she was paired with this lawyer working on this presentation, and he sent her this thing. And there's this other drug called Stematol.
Okay. And
Stematol has a side effect of inhibiting
the enzyme, the molecule,
the Dynamon.
Yep. Okay.
And Stematol is something taken by, like, tons of people because it's basically a treatment for motion sickness.
Wow. Okay.
And travel sickness, and if in high doses, it can be used as an antipsychotic.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she found that...
So she found a solution to a problem there.
And it's been a drug that had been out and approved for 60 years. Okay? So she tested it on mice.
Okay.
And she did it with, like, highly aggressive tumors. The tumors disappeared. And she got to phase 1 with humans, and 4 patients were studied, and they found, for the first time ever, they could move the drug target on a tumor, meaning they could change the cells that were responding.
Yep.
And, like, even though she's doing all this good work, she was nearly shut down, like, 4 times. Like, it was basically, like, grassroots crowdfunded to get there. And she's doing this talk, and she went to do the next clinical trial. She approached the drug company that made the antibody that they needed,
Okay.
and they didn't want to help because they have new drugs in the pipeline that are going to fight cancer and through the targeted therapy, and this just...
So it's a competitive product.
No, this just isn't going to make them money.
Oh, it's not going to make as much money.
It's
This
not
is
going to
other
make
ones.
us money. It's an old drug that they can't just jack the prices up on or anything. So phase 2 cost $5 million. And this was in 2018. I don't know if she's ever got the money, to be honest.
She better got freaking GoFundMe because we need her to be successful.
That's
I don't want
wild.
to be the one to have cancer and not get cured because these people aren't making enough money off this shit.
And literally, she said, when I got in this to cure cancer, no one told me that I had to make sure people were going to get rich off it.
Well, people don't understand the business side. It's really sad. I mean,
It's...
that's part of what we're trying to bring to light is, yes, the opioid crisis is massive and killing tons and tons of people. Still, though, driven by money and greed and the need to sell. And, across the board, you have just a lack of accountability again and a solution that does not drive us toward the common good, right, for the people that it's supposed to be helping.
Right. No, absolutely.
So, yeah, it's amazing.
I just have that one gentleman from the Joe Rogan.
Oh, yeah. That's a neat podcast.
Yeah, a guy
You
named
need to check it out. Google or YouTube it.
Chris Kesser. And he said, "We've accepted chronic disease as normal because it's so common. But there is an important difference between what is common and what is normal."
Sure. Nice quote.
And so he talked about the Somali tribe.
Okay.
And
Bolivia.
They're from Bolivia, and it's like one of the last groups of people who live
As we would have lived without modern influences and all that.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I keep finishing your sentence.
No, it's good. It's great. No, you're doing a good job. We got to finish the show sometime.
Nah,
so,
we're gonna go forever.
We're going forever.
Forever.
Yeah. So these people, the Somali, they're on a paleo diet, and if you don't know what that is, you can look it up. It's fun. And
Does not sound fun.
yeah, I know it doesn't. And,
I love pizza.
I know. I wouldn't do it. And they walk 8 miles a day. They are in sync with the sun cycle. Sleep 7 to 8 hours. The researchers were trying to ask the tribe about insomnia.
It's funny.
And yeah, they don't even have a word for insomnia because they all sleep good. They all work and they sleep good.
I wish you all had that.
80% lower heart disease rates than the U.S.
Wow.
And in the study, they were checking people from 50 to 40s to 94. Like, these people aren't like hunter-gatherers that die at 35.
Yeah.
They have almost no cognitive disorders, too.
Right. So, like Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah.
Talking about they don't have this massive epidemic of people that die of old age or are super forgetful and they call it old age when...
And they don't have big drug companies.
Yep, they don't have people. They don't hear how AstraZeneca, I think, is one of them, can help you or whatever.
The
Pfizer.
The one that's just absolutely ridiculous is Abilify.
Okay.
And Abilify is approved for the FDA to be an antipsychotic.
Yep, you showed it. You showed me this.
Okay,
yep.
But in 2014 or early 2015, it was the #1 selling drug in the country. How is an antipsychotic the #1 selling drug in a country with relatively low rates of psychotic people?
Yeah.
And the answer is that doctors are allowed to prescribe off book.
Yep.
Basically,
not for what the drug was meant or approved for.
Or tested for.
Yep. Doesn't have to be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be proven it's going to solve the issue.
It has to be FDA
Could literally
approved.
prescribe you anything.
And the doctor can prescribe it to you for basically anything. And again, I put forth this problem that doctors need to get out of the game. Like, they need to say, this is the treatment that you need, and then go to a pharmacist or somebody and be like, okay, this is what I need, and what's the cheapest way we can get that done? But you know what would happen? The pharmaceutical companies would just start sending lobbyists to pharmacies and
Well, they didn't. They would incentivize it in some fashion, right?
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, speaking of the lobbyist side of it, I mean, our politicians are a major driver in this. Those folks are not creating barriers and a legal framework where accountability is required, right? They set up these entities, these government agencies that are given the grant money. It should be a demand of our taxpayer dollars, the stewards of those dollars, to say, if you want X amount of dollars, I want in your grant proposal, you're going to have to provide me with some metric or some report out on a regular interval to explain where this money's going, what it's doing. I don't want you telling me that 60% of it is going to marketing, because I don't care if you market the damn thing. I care if it actually solves the problem. If it solves the problem and the doctors know about it, you won't have to market it, because they're just going to prescribe it, because it's in medical journals and being published to them and explaining how it's solving the problem.
So, and like, again, this is not a simple issue. This is very multifaceted, but like a thing to bring up from 2010 to 2016, out of the 210 drugs approved by the FDA,
Yep.
all of them were funded by the NIH.
Yep. National Institutes of Health.
Like, that
US
is
government entity.
your tax dollars.
Yep.
Okay, are funding research for the drugs.
Yep.
And I hope you know that we're the test subjects, not like me and Brent, but like America, all the time you go to the doctor, all that stuff that's collected, that goes to the NIH, that, and so they give them that information, and they give them money to do further testing. How are we not? We don't get any kickback for that.
It's like we're making a deal, right? We're making a deal with the
devil. No.
Well, we are, but with these companies, we're saying, hey, we're going to give you money
to fix us.
Yeah, and then you have to develop all this stuff and fix our problems, and there's no requirement for them to ever do that. We're just handing the money out, figure out these things, and then
they're allowed to make unlimited profits off it.
It's crazy.
And not only are they making unlimited profits, they're evergreening the patents, like Brent said earlier. So, and what that means is like you go to Walmart and you want to buy Tylenol. There's the name brand Tylenol, but there's also the Equate brand, right? And it's like super cheap, but it's the exact same. So
yeah,
you can save some money if you want to.
Right. If you want to buy the name brand, you can.
What these drug companies are doing are patenting their formula, their compound, so that no other companies can make it. They cannot have a generic on the market. By doing that, they're allowed to capitalize the market, monopolize the market, and capitalize on that, and then jack up their prices. And so what Brent was also saying earlier is the money that they could be using to cure cancer or something, they're going back to like their insulin product. They're changing a small formula.
Yeah.
They made a small change in the formula, in the compound, and they they'll reissue the patent to extend it. And like they reissue a patent, we're talking, I think, 75 years. 50?
No, the patents themselves, I think it's more like 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah,
for songwriting,
you're guaranteed
it's like 75. It's, I think, for songwriting, it's 50 years after the composer dies.
Yeah, but that's, isn't that...
I know, that's copyright law, songwriting. Different ballgame with patents, I'm sure.
But, yeah, something like that. That's what they're doing, and they're locking it down for X amount of years. It's not super long, though.
So we have doctors being lobbied.
Sorry, initial 20-year protection.
20 years.
Yep, for patents.
And that's not long enough?
Well, it's the business
train.
model, you know, and if you have a market cornered, there's been other monopolies in history, antitrust laws, right? That's why they exist, to break up these monopolies and make a situation where the consumer is not being completely taken advantage of. And, you know, I think we owe it to ourselves to kind of push the issue on it, because if we don't, there's no way that this model's going to correct itself. There's just no possible way. It's just going to get uglier and uglier, more expensive, and something's going to break at some point. It's just a matter of, I have no idea what that means. What's going to happen?
It means that, okay, and this is where I think this is important to talk about the other side of things.
Sure.
Like, and we're not doing big food today or anything like that, but like, This will be a few days old by the time everyone hears this, but Bill Maher did a bit where he talked about how, I don't want to categorize it the way Corden did, but
Yeah, it's not super kind.
no, but basically Bill Maher was saying that, it's the way we eat that affect us. And I think that the data I found earlier talking about the tribe in Bolivia that shows that without fast food, without artificial light, without all these other things,
Yep.
you don't need to take all this medicine.
Yep.
If we eat better, if we take care of ourselves better, we could probably have single payer, no problem.
Yeah.
And if we did have single payer, the government would then have a hell of a bigger incentive to find the cheaper treatments, like aspirin for breast cancer. I know it's an oversimplification, but it's still like a valid research that's actually being put out. And governments that do foot the bill for their medical bills are interested in cheaper technologies.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff it's bound together. So I mean, like the diet is tied together with your overall health. Which, if your overall health is declining, then you need the medicines, and then your ability to afford the medicines is dependent upon your standing in society, the job you have, and your ability to afford insurance. Because without that, you're basically, like we were talking earlier, you're hung up to dry. You're spreading yourself thin with it, or you're not getting it at all. And so I mean, it's kind of like its own little cycle too. Like if you are not of means and you have a poor diet, then you're naturally going to be down that path of being less healthy and then needing the drugs. Whereas if you have money, you're typically probably a little more healthy. You're going to a doctor more often. They're helping coach you on the right diet and all this, that, and the other. You could afford to eat healthier with buying vegetables and not going to convenience stores to shop. So it's just like this massively connected web of things, and it's not impossible to improve things bit by bit, but I think it's all definitely connected.
I assume a lot of people that watch this show are close to our age and are familiar with the term grinding. Like you grind for things in video games. It's something that takes you many hours to do, but you achieve that thing. I encourage us to think of our health as a grind.
Yeah.
That it is something worth the time and the energy we put in, that we will not see the benefits of it until much further down the road, though.
Well, the massive benefits, and granted, things happen to people, but if you take care of yourself, you're gonna be a lot better off when you're old than if you don't.
There was a great NPR study or NPR radio segment that talked about families who it was this they unearthed this thing in Ireland or Scotland, a church that kept like very very vigorous records of everybody in the towns, like how when they're born, who they married, how their kids lived, died, generations of this, okay? And they were able to take a lot out of that data, and they found that like parents who went through a famine or something like that, their kids actually had a lower chance of heart disease by 40%. I mean, it was like a massive change. And like, what is our diets doing to our kids?
Oh yeah, I know.
And like, and that's something I encourage you to think about. If you don't care about your health, think about your kids' health.
Yeah, I know.
If you don't have kids yet, especially if you do have kids, I mean, I guess you go for it.
If you have kids, you do what you got to do. But at the end of the day, it's important to stop and think about what you're putting into their bodies and the habits you're building and teaching them. So,
and that's where I think a lot of these problems would help if we had that personal accountability.
Yep. So let's talk about solutions.
I love solutions.
What do you have?
I have no solutions. No, my biggest idea is that I would love to see a non-profit drug company.
Okay.
I would like to see a company that says we're going to pay the salary X number of dollars to both the executives and the researchers, and all the money that we have is not going to anything but new drugs. Like new drugs that the focus needs to be on the patients, not the profits.
Right. So instead of looking at the amount of money you'd make off of a drug, you'd look at how many people would benefit from that drug.
Yeah, and I think your incentive and where you shop it to is the countries that have something where the government is involved in the healthcare companies. Because again, like if you think about it the other way too, the pushback from scientists that work for those breaking companies doing the targeted cancer therapy,
Yeah.
they want to work there because it's the groundbreaking research. They want to be on
part of it.
They want to be part of it, and it's not flashy to go back and say, "Well, let's see what aspirin does." I get that. I mean, I do get that, but I think if we have countries who are footing the bill, they're interested in aspirin. So get a nonprofit drug company that has a bunch of bleeding heart scientists that are super passionate about doing it. Get executives that are also super passionate, know their strengths, willing to work for a good cause, that they're not going to make $60 million a year in the private sector. I mean, I know it gets ridiculous, but I believe there are people out there. I believe these people out there exist, and I would love to see even the billionaires in our country start dropping the money on this. Bill and Melinda Gates, they could drop $50 million on that lady.
Yeah, they could for sure. They probably aren't even aware that's something they could do. Sounds like something their foundation would be interested in for sure.
Any solutions for you?
I'm
excited. You've been tiptoeing around this one.
I like an idea that a lady named Mariana Mazzucato.
Welcome to my
Forgive
world.
me, Mariana. She wrote an article in the Washington Post called "Big Pharma is Hurting Drug Innovation," and I like an idea that she proposed. It's based on the idea of DARPA, which is the U.S. Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, which is basically a mission oriented research arm of the U.S. Military. It's a defense contractor type organization, but these are the folks who develop, all kinds of defense capabilities and a lot of other things. And I don't have any examples specifically. I think like stealth technology and things like that they were involved in. But think about the most cutting edge military advancements that we have and are using today, and they still exist. DARPA's still around.
Weren't they the ones that did like the whole psychic thoughts?
Probably. I think the CIA did some of that too.
Yeah. Okay.
But probably
sure.
Did some testing on it. So DARPA, I like that concept, and so like take it and flip it over to like the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, creating a DARPA type entity that drives forward the agenda. Basically, the government would set their priorities, but the agency would follow through with that those priorities by seeking help and input and production from the private industry. Like they would fund those, but it's the accountability piece that's missing, right? DARPA, when they work with private contractor agencies, it's a project and there's milestones, there's goals, and there's accountability, there's metrics. How are we performing on this? Are we meeting our milestones? Is our goal going to be met by the due date, right? And making sure that the benefit is there.
But I feel like that's what Big Pharma does and kind of got us into this, because their end goal is capitalism.
Correct, but
if it was a governmental agency.
Would not be. Yeah. They would basically be fueling the innovative path of the private organizations and guaranteeing that those innovations actually make it into production and out there for those of us in the world that need this. So basically, HHS, through this health DARPA, could put pressure on companies, making sure that the benefits are shared with the public, right? They're focusing on innovation, reinvesting those profits, instead of doing share buybacks, which I didn't talk about earlier, but that's where a lot of the money these companies make goes to, is they're buying back shares to increase their amount of control over their own company. And also, so they'd be driving transparency, right? Making sure that we know where the hell our tax dollars are going, and they could create conditions to make sure that those new drugs are affordable. They could help set the pricing from that.
That was one of my other I call it a silly solution. I would love to see how much the active ingredients cost printed on my prescription.
That'd be amazing.
If you're paying,
You don't know what your active ingredients are anyway, let alone what they cost.
Sure, but you're paying $2,000 for a drug, and then you add it all up, and you find out it costs 14 cents to make.
Yeah, this is dandelion powder and linseed oil.
Well, yeah, I know, and I'm not trying to get to like the bottom of the ingredients. I'm just saying, like, I think people, I feel like we live in a world with social media that we could shame drug companies into saying this is ridiculous.
This is kind of like what the Trump administration or someone did, where they're trying to get the hospitals to publish all their procedure costs or whatever. And I get why they're trying to do that, but that's a little different because it doesn't work exactly. Like if you're in the hospital and you had a stroke, you're not going to go, I'm going to get off my deathbed here and
shop around.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, no, I get you.
But, yeah.
I get you. Yeah, there has to be something.
And I think it's back to a lot of like gun control, incremental change to drive us toward a better state.
We need to care, and we need to care enough that it's not simple. I know it's not simple, and I hope we haven't just confused everybody, but like I like to talk about penicillin because when the guy found penicillin, you know what he did? He didn't patent it.
Nope.
He left it open.
Yep.
So we could save lives. Money was
Countless
lives. Money was not his end goal, okay? And that's not going to happen again, it feels like.
Well, and at least the current model is not going to support that.
Well, here's the other big issue is that Big Pharma is shutting down a lot of their research divisions. They don't even have the research division because they'll piggyback off of educational institutions.
Yep. The learning hospitals and the labs. Yep. I got you.
And it's not fair. I hate to say it like that, but it's not.
You should just throw your hand up like Bernie.
I know. I've had enough. I'm sick of it.
No, in all seriousness, something needs to be done. I think that if at the very least our government needs to hold those dollars being given to the drug companies accountable. There needs to be something there. That's the very base minimum. What the money going for?
This is the worst thing because it's like I don't know how you do it because the more you meddle, I don't know what you do. You can't tell them don't spend the money on marketing.
Why?
Why can you? They're private companies.
I'm not going to give it to you if you do.
You're not going to give them what?
Make a contract in the grant and say, you cannot spend this money on marketing.
Do you think they really care about that small amount of money?
I don't know how much money is off hands, but I think they probably care about any money.
I mean, I agree, but I
don't think I have any dollar amounts on how much money.
Yeah, it's really hard to find dollar amounts on how much drugs actually cost. It's hard to find prices on how much executives make. It's hard to find prices on how much the researchers make.
I do know that Pfizer's chief executive made reportedly $27.9 million in 2017.
But that doesn't talk about the ratio to the researcher.
No, not at all.
Yeah, that's right. I know that's public information. On publicly traded companies.
So, I mean, I think we might be going down a bit of a rabbit hole there, but I think that it's very, it's important to understand the U.S. taxpayer has funded research over every single one of the 210 new drugs that the FDA has approved between 2010 and 2016. Every single one.
That's us. Like, that is our investment, and we're getting ripped off for our investment.
Yep.
It's like a con.
It is. It's one of the biggest parts of the con that no one's getting. We're all off fighting individual problems. Not that they're not problems.
That's that, again, you said it earlier. I know I hate to go back on points. I really do. But it's such a scary thing to think that if your disease isn't profitable, they don't research it.
Yeah. You could literally have some majorly curable issue and they won't even pursue it at all because it's not going to make any money.
How do you take comfort or solace in these things? I'm asking questions to the general public now.
Yeah, it's business. Let us know your thoughts, though, because that's part of this, right? We really want to know out of this, all of what we said, the stats, the opinion points, the stuff that just breaks your heart you're hearing.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think. Like, we want to start an open discussion about this and understand, like, what solutions do you have? What are we missing in our points?
And I don't know if you did the research on it, but that the little I read on it seems to be that the pharmaceutical companies seem to be giving increasing their donations more on the right than the left.
They are. Yes, I actually have some of that information. I'm not gonna. We're too far, I think, into this for me to rattle off every single dollar amount I have. But I can tell you, I could maybe list some examples. The stakes are high, right? If the Senate flips to the Democrats,
Yeah.
The Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America lobby is gonna freak out because they're giving a bunch of money to Republicans, and that's what's shaping
Pretty sure Darren LaHood, his number one industry, that
pharmaceuticals.
yeah,
Yeah.
CVS, I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, and so I mean, anybody running for re-election, let's see, for the last election cycle, for mid 2017, $115,000 each for the 27 senators that were running for re-election.
Each.
Yep, and
and that's
so like John,
less than one treatment of cancer.
Senator John Cornyn, Texas.
Yeah.
Large critic of the way he actually is a critic of how drug makers use patents to extend their monopolies and block competitors. Right? He introduced a bill that would empower the government to sue these folks. He's got a re-election fight. They're giving money to him. So some of these folks, it's so complicated, these issues, right?
Yeah.
But other things I know that you and I wouldn't be overly happy about that he supports, that money's going toward that as well.
Yeah.
So it's just like this tangled web. So you have Democrats, Republicans getting money from these folks. Most of the Democrats are getting a lot less than Republican folks. Like 19 Senate Republicans running for 2020. They collected on average more than $32,500 from each pharmaceutical industry, while 11 Democrats, same situation, collecting about $20,000. So,
yeah.
I mean, the numbers aren't lying. They're putting money on both sides, but the majority of it's going to keep the status quo.
I don't know what information that I want you to walk away with from this episode, people, but I would encourage you to ask your doctor if there's a cheaper medicine, if you can't afford your medicines.
Know you're being ripped off. Know that the pharmaceutical industry is not out there to necessarily take care of you. There is like I said, my opinion is there is an underlying mechanism that is good in that we need some medicines to improve our lives. But we don't need this almost like twin to the military-industrial complex, which we're going to talk about in an episode someday. We don't need a twin to that is a self-fulfilling, self-perpetuating monster of an industry that is just driven toward profit at the expense of the public that it's supposed to be serving, and that serves it.
And I think the more important, I don't want to say more important, but it is the prolonging sickness.
Sure.
Like, they're keeping us sick.
Yeah. You said, somebody quoted that we make more money trying to prescribe drugs to healthy people versus the sick because there's a larger population of healthy people.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense. It's sick, but it makes sense.
I know. And I think this is the issue. Liberals, if you want universal health care, well, we got to get eating better, people, because at the rate we're going, we can't afford universal health care. It'll bankrupt our country. And I hate to be the guy that says that because I believe in universal health care so much. I do not like insurance companies. I do not think we should make a dime of profit off people's sickness. I just think that's morally reprehensible. But I also understand that countries do need money, and dying on this hill...
Gotta pay for some.
Yeah. Doesn't solve the bigger problem.
Everybody and their brother's taking all the resources. There's not enough to go around, and we're all dying of everything anyway.
It's great. So,
this has been fun, though. Really.
Milk gives you cancer, cheese gives you cancer, eggs gives you cancer, but don't worry, because that gives you cancer, too.
Yep.
So...
It's all relative.
All right.
So on that note, guys...
Yeah, this is fun.
Thanks for tuning in.
Glad to be back with you, and we're still on next week.
Back on the schedule.
Yep, and the grind.
Topics to come.
Yeah, I don't know what we're doing next week. We're going to stick political. We've gotten down this rabbit hole of
neat topics that interest us. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
We're gonna come back to this.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
We're gonna. I think you're gonna say we'll take a look at the top 3 Democratic candidates next week.
I think we should dive into those differences, similarities, our opinions.
So,
get ready.
watch those clips that I share. Watch the Bill Maher one. Let's talk about diet. Eventually, we're going to do big food
Yeah.
too.
What do you think about Bill Maher's approach to that? I want it. That's one killing me.
Yeah. So look at Bill Maher, and then what's the guy? James? Is it James Corden?
Yes. I think
Yeah,
so.
James Corden. He's a late night host on CBS. He did like a rebuttal calling Bill Maher out for his approach.
Yep.
So. Yeah, let us know what you think, and tune in next week, and
More great stuff to come, guys.
yeah, so have a nice night, have a nice week.
And we'll see you next week.